Welcome back. What is good, homies? Welcome back to the Drafts and Draughts podcast. I'm Joe, aka Sultan. This is Dave, aka Disaster.
We are back, baby. We are fucking back. We're back. Classic.
That was so good and unexpected. We are fucking back.
We're fucking back, man.
It's been like 3 weeks since we potted together. It's Sunday,
together,
June
so that's good.
30th. Yeah, it's true. Today's Sunday, June 30th. It's 4th of July week. I am repped out. I got my swag on. I got my American flag bandana on. I got my stunner shades. Dave just looks like Dave.
I'm gonna get some
but Dave's looking. So today we're going to be going through our first Stonks Up Buy Low Dynasty show, where we're going to go through and talk about what it means to. Oh, that is gas, dude. When did you get that?
Sign Adams jersey. That's what I'll wear.
Okay.
This was I don't know, like 2 months ago.
Fuck yeah. Did you get it signed? Like, do you see him and get it signed, or do you just get it like off an auction or something?
No, it's authenticated by Beckett.
Nice. Fuck yeah, dude. That's sick.
Legit.
He brought you a ship. That's so awesome.
Oh, I can't throw my headset. Keep going.
All right. So today we're going to be going through doing a buy low segment on some players that aren't necessarily buy cheap, but I think that they can be bought for lower than they maybe will be worth a year from now or a year from today. We'll talk about what that means to be a buy low in a little bit. But before we do, Dave, do you have a draft on hand for a draft review? I'm unfortunately still recovering from a sickness I had for the past week, so I'm trying to not to burn the candle at both ends. And I just golfed today. I just finally got some physical activity, and I don't want to push it and have a beer. So I'm leaving it up to you to carry the draft.
So you're telling me you're gonna lie to the audience and say you didn't drink today?
Bro, I didn't. I went to a bachelor party scramble yesterday. Drove an hour and a half to New Hampshire, played a whole scramble, sucked ass, and then drove home. No beers, nothing.
Wow. Yeah,
changed man.
We got a little treehouse freshly shipped through the Ship Sticks. Shout out Ship Sticks. I know it's illegal, but we do what we got to do. A little 10th anniversary. Very green. Green's one of my favorite beers ever. Bought 4 or 8 of these when I was in Massachusetts. Have 1 left. Shipped through. I shipped 8 beers in my golf bag. Only 1 exploded, so that's not bad.
That's all. Wait, how did you ship them in your golf bag? Do you have like a tube or
No, I just threw them in a plastic bag and threw them in my compartment and just
said fuck it.
Just said fuck it. They were in the bag.
I would have thought the pressure of the cabin would just make them all explode.
I don't know. They were in transit for like 4 days, so I've already had this. It's a great beer.
It's fucking awesome. Let's give it.
It's a 5. No, it's a straight up 5. It's
5.
Straight 5.
Okay.
I
love that.
Yeah. Again, Galaxy's my favorite hop. We talked about it before.
Yep.
Green is just Galaxy. It's just Galaxy on top of Galaxy, and so to the moon, baby.
Galaxy squared, bro.
G squared.
All right. Dave cracks that, gives it a 5. Love to hear it. I have right here some fresh H2O. I'm not going to review it. Let's get into the OTQ, the one tough question. Very straight to the point. Dave, what is your biggest Dynasty League pet peeve? It could be related to managers, could be related to settings, could be related to the timing of the way things happen when there's, the way that the schedule, the trade deadlines, or the way people interact and a general pet peeve just about playing Dynasty that bothers you, that you wish that you could snap your fingers and change.
In the pre-show, you told me what yours are going to be. It was the first thing that came to my mind, so I'm not going to say it though.
Okay.
The biggest pet peeve I have in Dynasty is kind of twofold. The best part about fantasy is the draft. We've solved our problem in the rookie draft, I think, by doing a long draft, and that's made the draft awesome. So I've really enjoyed we've done 2 seasons now of doing slow draft. It's been really, really good. 8 hours per pick, with turnoffs at night. I think the new pet peeve that I've gotten some heat for, and is what it is. But Joe, as another commissioner and co-commissioner-ish of PDFD, has pushed me at times to just be like, Dave, just make the call. And rather than do this whole, run around trying to get everyone to decide if it's okay to even vote on or whatever, just do it. So this year we've routinely done where you have the rookies unlock during the off season where it's like a week at a time. Every
waivers.
Wednesday, waivers would run. This year, and what we saw was last year, then people just ended up spending stupid money on Fab in week 1 or week 2 because someone got hurt, Nick Chubb, whatever. And we also just, I went back, I looked. There was 16 of roughly 100 people that got picked. And 16 of them stayed past week 1, or like stayed on the roster starting week 1. And so
You're talking
there's
about
a lot
like,
of junk in there, but there was
Okay.
16 of those that survived into week 1. And of those 16, I think it was 11 or 12 survived past week 3.
Wow. You're saying
And so-
waiver off-season waiver acquisition acquired players, about 100 were made and only 13 made it to week 2.
Yeah, so it's not
Or
a
week
very
4.
high number that stayed, but the people that got picked up were, a lot of them are really promising rookies that were tight ends or running backs that ended up having some play last year. And we also have the Puka Nakuas that got picked up there, and a couple others that ended up being some really good picks.
Kyron,
and so
yeah.
for this, Kyron was on the one, and some of them got added and dropped. And so, and those were picked up like $1, $2, whatever. And so for this year, what we're implementing is a way to hopefully have a more exciting Fab experience where it still is going to be essentially how waivers run, where it's just highest bid, but instead of just being anonymous, it's going to be a true auction. And that's one of the things that I regret us not. I still kind of, I mean, I don't know if I regret Superflex or not. We're not Superflex, but I do regret not making the initial draft an auction, because when we see in the rookie drafts, it's kind of the same boat, right? Where you have the first overall pick, you're getting whoever you want to get, whether it be this year Caleb or Marvin, depending on your draft. Most it's even Marvin. It's just such a tough environment, and so for an actual draft, you get the same bad luck too. If you have the first overall pick, you have full control of your destiny. Where if you have 6, top 5 guys are not going to come there. One might fall, but you're kind of out of luck. And so that's probably the thing that irks me the most. Is it's tied more to like, you're missing the excitement that you get with a redraft every year, which is the best part of the fantasy season. Although Dynasty ends up being a full year thing that is just so exciting kind of throughout the year. More just tepid, good level excitement versus like peak that you get with a draft. And that's the thing you miss out on, is like, you just don't have that super high. Even the rookie draft gets good, but it doesn't get like as high as like if we were to do a new Dynasty draft, or if we were to do a new auction draft, would be sick. So trying to add some more of those like peak moments, which I think the auction will be. And again, I've told guys like, hey, if you want, put me in your taxi bid for certain people. Like, tell me your max bid and I will control that in the auction if you really just can't make it. But like, I'll only do it for like, say, two players per person, so that I'm not managing too much. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be exciting. I'm excited to do the rookie auction and use some Fab. And so we're going to use our actual from our 1,000 Fab into that auction, and we'll see how it goes. But
cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's really a pet peeve, but I see where you're coming from. It's something that's, you miss out on the excitement around having events. You're muted somehow right now, even though it doesn't show that.
No, I was saying my pet peeve is there's no peak excitement in
no milestones anymore. Really, it's just kind of like I guess it's more. I look at it as like all the little things, like every trade, every acquisition, and all that is like so much more meaningful in Dynasty than it is in redraft. Because I always hate how like in redraft, like you start off 1-5 and you're basically, your season is over. Like you spend all year waiting for fantasy football season to start up. You go 1-5, and then you're like, well, I guess there's next year. But in Dynasty, there's always something you can do. You can always flip some of your players for picks or whatever. But so I guess that's kind of offsets the lack of milestones with having just something to do all the time, which is kind of cool. My biggest pet peeve is, it'll be way shorter than Dave's. It's non-responsive managers. It's just this one thing that like, I can deal with someone who sends me a shitty trade. I can deal with bad attitudes. I can deal with people who have differing political opinions in my league. I can deal with people who forget to set their lineup. I can deal with a lot of things. I can deal with injuries. I can deal with whatever, missing out on my waiver claim because I didn't have enough Fab in my bid, like whatever. But my God, just non-responsiveness. Like if I have to text you and then it's like, oh shit, let me go check. It's like, what do you mean let me go check? You should have got a notification from the app 4 days ago when I sent you the trade offer. What do you mean? Oh shit, let me go check. Like, oh shit, fucking find a new hobby if you can't be bothered to check the app at least once a day. I don't see how you can. I guess maybe not now because there's nothing going on. But like, my God, during football season, I'm in Sleeper every single day, multiple times a day. at very least once a day, I'm checking it in the morning when I wake up. Like, it's the first thing I'm doing. Like, roll over, kiss my wife good morning, and then check sleeper. I think that's how it works, right? I don't know. I'm not married, so but that's my pet peeve is just I can't stand if I have to send a text in a trade in the app, then I send a message in the DM in the app, and then I send a text in the trade, and it's like, what the fuck's going on? And then or they'll be like, oh, actually, I really like that trade. It's really I think I might take that one.
Do it.
And then what are you doing? It's just like you're sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And okay, anyway, I've already said enough. I've said more than those non-responsive managers have ever said. Anyways, on to the buy lows. So this was an interesting episode. I shot over my pre-notes to Dave earlier in the week, and he's like, some of these guys aren't even buy lows. These guys are first round picks. And I'm like, Dave, let me cook. Fucking sit back and relax. Enjoy it. This is going to be a long episode. I think this is going to be a doozy. I have no way of shortening it, especially when Dave chimes in and shoots down every fucking take I have. But how do you differentiate a buy low from a sell low? Or I guess I should have phrased that question differently. Just how do you differentiate a buy low versus buy cheap? What I'm trying to say is that not every player on this list today is going to be, oh, buy low. That means I can go out and shoot a second for a guy who's really could be worth 2 firsts, or go shoot a fourth round pick to go pick up a future starter. Like, no, it just means you're buying at a price that's significantly below what their price could be next year or what their production should be. When we get to this in season, when we talk about buy lows, we're going to talk about more productive players than dynasty values. But since we're in end of June, we're going to be talking mostly on this list about players you can buy that their dynasty value could be higher at this time next year through a number of things. The second order of how I would define this is a player that has a significant chance to improve their production in the following season. So if you're buying a guy now that you think their 2025 season could improve their production, which inherently would increase their value at this time next year. So that's not necessarily buying production now, but buying production later. A good example of this would have been if you bought a guy like Kyler Murray last offseason, or actually he didn't get hurt. Jameson Williams last year, when you knew he was recovering from ACL surgery, knowing he's going to play the following year. Obviously, it's very obvious, but at the same time, that's kind of what I'm getting at with how they could improve their production the following year. And as we're talking about him, Dave, do you have any, before I get into what I was about to say, have you thought at all about how you would define a buy low or a buy cheap, or when you're thinking about this, what you're looking for?
Yeah, for me, I think that's a lot of my team actually is this right now, where they all have the potential to take a significant step backwards or significant step forwards this year. I don't have a lot of safe guys. And I think that's kind of how I evaluate it, right? Like, they're in this middle thing where you have some experience from them. Sure, rookies are going to be kind of like, they're always a little bit of a toss up, but for all the guys that I have on my team, like, a lot of them are, second, third, fourth year players that have shown something. They've shown something kind of promising at times, but none of them are elite. And now the question is any of them going to take that step to become elite, or they're elite and they're older? And it's like, are they going to maintain with a new team elite, or going to get back to that level? And so for me, it's that question for all of these guys. Like, and for anyone listening, your whole goal is to be bullish on something, like, have a perspective. You can't run around with no perspective on every single player. And so Joe thinks I shit on everybody. I shit on everyone that's on the Salt and the Swags team. It's just what I do. So they all suck.
It is true.
It doesn't matter what the stats are or how good, the efficiency is. Like, they suck. And so that's a perspective. So you need to game 1 too, whether that's based on the manager and the team they have, or the actual team that they're in the NFL, or you've watched their film one time in the red zone with one play where they fumbled and, like, that person sucks. That's fine.
Yeah.
You just have to have that perspective to know why you are or are not going to buy something. And especially when when the bulk of media or people or peers are the opposite of you, that's where you take advantage, either because you're selling because everyone loves them and you're like, they kind of suck, or you're buying because everyone says they do suck and you think they're going to be better this year, have a chance to be better. And it's, again, a lot of it is, or some of it is going to be buying because you actually believe that. Other is like, I'll just take the shot, even if it's really cheap. Like, it's like, if I can get it for a third, yeah, I'll just fuck it. I'll spend the third because I could be selling them, or I could be getting first round value of a pick this year to try to win. And that's where Joe and I debated a little bit in doing this. Like, I came back just questioning, are we doing this contending this year, or is this like a, just in general? And he kind of put it out there that, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't want to speak specifically for you, but the sentiment was that these are people that hopefully the reason we're talking about them is they have a decent prospect for not just this year, but for 2 to 4 years out in the future.
Yeah, I think you're spot on it. Like, if you're looking for the most productive buy lows you could possibly get, you're not going to find them on this list. We're not here to outline the obvious players like your Derrick Henrys or your Keenan Allens, the guys who are probably the cheapest at their skill group within their tiers that can also put up wide receiver 1 or RB1 seasons. You're going to go, why are they not on the list? Like, because those are guys that, even if Derrick Henry goes out this year and runs for 1,600 yards, he's not going up in value next year. It's just not, there's no chance for him to improve value. So that's why I left those types of guys off the list. But so going back to, how you forecast out, or how I like to forecast out a change in production the following year. The obvious one I mentioned earlier was an injury designation now means they should have future production later. That's an easy one to try to forecast and kick the tires on, especially if you're in a position to try to do that, to buy low on an injured player. The second would be a change in scenery of sorts. The obvious one would be a player changing teams as an opportunity to have a fresh start, a fresh head coach, a fresh scheme, whatever. Or just a player who's on his current team who has a new head coach comes in, brings in a new passing attack, brings in a new offense, has a history of targeting tight ends, and now this tight end gets a buff, or a team who gets a new quarterback. It's important to start thinking about quarterback situations and say, is there a chance for this guy to get a new quarterback, a better quarterback next year? Like, if you had the wherewithal a couple years ago to look at a guy like Marcus Mariota and go, he is not of the future QB1 of the Falcons, when there was a huge dip on Drake London and Kyle Pitts after they fucking sucked, you could have gotten them for half the cost you're going to get them for now. That type of foresight to say, maybe it doesn't matter. I don't think they're going to get Kirk Cousins. I think they're just going to get better than Marcus Mariota, which is kind of like, it's obviously you can't always be right, but those are maybe some types of moves you could start looking at. QBs now who have contract situations that are running up against it, and they may not be a top 20 quarterback. You look at a team like the Rams, which is a bad example because Stafford has had a great freaking year, but the Raiders and Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell are their quarterbacks right now. And obviously there's so much buzz around Brock Bowers that you're really not getting a discount on him. But God forbid he has a really, really slow start. That's the type of buy low opportunity I would try to pounce on. Not every buy low means you actually are getting below their perceived market value, as Dave was getting at. Like, you have to have a perspective of your own. It just means the window is open. Like, right now, Brock Bowers might cost 2 firsts in a 1 quarterback league. And maybe you go offer that manager 2 firsts and he goes, I'm not accepting it. I want to see what Brock Bowers does. Week 6 rolls around. He's got 14 catches for 300 yards in the season or whatever. That's ridiculous, but you get my point. And now it doesn't mean that he's now worth a first and a second. It just means the window is now fucking open. You can now make that 2 first offer that wouldn't have been accepted a couple weeks ago, and maybe you get it. When Jamar Chase went down with a hip injury 2 years ago, it didn't mean his value came down. It meant the window opened to buy Jamar Chase. Justin Jefferson went down with a hamstring last year. That did not mean you could get him for less than 3 firsts. It meant, wow, that window might have just cracked open for a split second, and you might have been able to send 3 firsts to get him last year. So those changes in situation open the window. But that's how production might improve from year over year. How value goes up, which they're tied hand in hand. At the end of the day, everything's about scoring points. So the way I tried to define it when I was writing this up ahead of time was value goes up through one thing changing or the other. They can either get better efficiency or they can get more volume. And one is easier to project. It's a lot easier to say, damn, Devon Achane was super efficient. I think he's going to get more volume next year than it is to say, holy fuck, Rachaad White got 350 touches last year. Even though they're inefficient, I think he's going to get more efficient next year. That's a lot harder for me to argue to somebody to say, and Dave would go, oh, why do you think that? Well, I saw Rachaad White posted he's in the gym every day. He's hitting the treadmills. Like he's fucking pushing the sled. He's getting after it. So I think he's going to be way more efficient next year. But it is easy to say, hey, this running back only had 100 touches last year. He could easily double that without getting a ton of volume. So those are one way of the optimism around a player changing without having to make any dramatic adjustments to your forecast on a player. Thinking back, like if you think back to like some other guys who had super high efficiency touches in the past that we all said when they get the volume, they're going to be monsters. Think Tony Pollard when he was behind Ezekiel Elliott, like what was that, 3 years ago? Everyone was like, oh my God, they need to just give this take the shackles off. Let him have the workload, the workhorse workload. Let him get more touches. Obviously, that kind of didn't work, but there was a window there where Tony Pollard was buyable for like maybe a second and one quarterback, and then he was sellable for probably 2 firsts for a very brief window. And now you can probably buy him for early second or late first. I don't know. The whole point is not the whole game isn't about necessarily day trading, but when we're talking about buying low and selling high and stuff like that, these are the types of windows you want to try to look for. Is you want to try to identify those super high efficient players that we say, damn, if they just got more volume, holy shit, they could end up being an absolute monster. Another thing we kind of already talked about would be look at veteran contracts on players' teams and look for players who are behind them. Like last year, I think it was maybe fairly obvious, but Ty J. Spears getting drafted behind like Derrick Henry. Obviously, Spears wasn't going to cut into Henry's workload, but it was easy to see that Henry was on the last year's deal. There was an opportunity for him to become the starter. Same with Rachaad White behind Leonard Fournette 2 years ago. And I'm sure there's more. Mari Cooper ahead of CeeDee Lamb. Like there's players who get drafted in situations and you go, wow, he's going to be forever the number 2 on his team because they have, Diontae Johnson there. And then lo and behold, Diontae Johnson is gone. And now George Pickens has opportunity. So it's not always that easy, but I think that's one way to try to identify it. The last one I have here is I'll look at buy lows too, based on our roster size and our taxi eligibility. Like it's one thing to say this guy's a buy low if you have a 30-man bench. Like, oh yeah, can you believe that Trey Palmer is running with the first team in the slot in 4 wide receiver sets for the Bucks, and you're like, dude, I don't have roster space to carry Trey Palmer. But in some leagues, maybe you would. So I think it's important to kind of figure out how many taxi slots do I have? Can I stash some of these guys? Looking at other teams and saying, this guy can't hold all these guys, but I'll happily take a shot on somebody for a 4th that I think has potential to break out and become a superstar with either opportunity or efficiency. And so, at the end of the day, what we're going to try to talk through is all of these players are only buy lows at the right price. They're not buy at all costs players. These are just players that we think with the rights, or I think, and Dave's going to just argue with me, that I think you could see a path to their value going up this time next year. And at the right price, there's an argument to be made to buy these guys, especially if you have the space on your roster or the space on your taxi squad to get some of these rookies or sophomores. Actually, I don't think I have any rookies in this report, but yeah, Dave, if you got nothing, can go on to the well, I just had a little bit mini stroke there. Give me a little break. I'm not drinking either, so I don't know what that was. But if you have anything to add, obviously feel free. I just kind of rambled there for a little bit.
No, let's do it. Maybe I would say for the audience, let's recap what the 3 categories are. Just top.
Oh
line.
yeah. So the 3 categories that I put together for this show, or that we came to agreement on, were the first category. The first category of guys I have highlighted are buy low. I put up air quotes, guys that have the potential to vault into the superstar category. So they're not necessarily cheap, but they're guys that are not yet in the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson tier. They're not yet in the Sam Laporta tier. They're not yet in the Bijan Brees Hall tier. And they're not yet in the Mahomes Josh Allen tier. But we're going to explain why you can buy them for less than what those tiers cost. And there's a legitimate chance for some of these guys to vault into that category, albeit it's not a slam dunk. I don't think anyone's out here saying this is definitely going to happen, or else they'd be that expensive. But there's a path for it to happen, and we think if you wanted to have some conviction behind it, like Dave said, if you wanted to stand on business and say, "Hey, I think this is going to happen. I have full trust in this situation," then go out there and buy them at your market value right now, because that value is going to go up. The next category I had here was unsexy but cheap producers who are veterans, but they're not as old as you think. And there's, like kind of Dave said, they're still treading the tire there to where they could end up being having some dynasty value to at least 2 or 3 years down the line, or production 2 or 3 years down the line. And the last category is younger, cheaper players with upside. So they're not going to be necessarily guys you're buying to put in your lineup right away, or guys you think could be superstars, but they're guys that you think you could take stabs on for managers at a really cheap cost and could see their value spike pretty quickly based on some historical trends, or based on some usage that we could see happen. So yeah, with that said, let's get into it. Like I said, this first category is superstar potential. They're not really buy lows. They're almost buy highs with conviction, kind of like we're saying, like where you say, I think this guy's a superstar and I'm going to buy him at their market value. And here is an exhibit. The first category I have here is for these receivers. So, and there's going to be some guys in this list that are going to show up later. But what I have here is I put together, this is from a database I put together, which I have for the past 6 seasons, wide receivers going from left to right. The first column is the player's name. The second column is what their draft capital was. The third column is what their rookie season was. The fourth column here is their fantasy points per game, their rookie season. The next column is their yards per route run, their rookie season. Their target per route run, their rookie season, and their team target market share rookie season, which is of their team's pass attempts, how many of those targets did they command? And what I did was I sorted these by specific benchmarks that I noticed were trending for a lot of the better players in the league, of just like the bare minimum hurdles they had to hit for yards per route run, which was like 1.3 yards per route run, 13% target per route run, and at least a 10% team target market share, which are not hard hurdles to clear. But on this list, you're going to see guys like Cooper Kupp, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle. And then we get to the class of 2022 down here. We have the big ones I wanted to highlight are Drake London, George Pickens, and Garrett Wilson. So these are the 3 that I think are, and again, you're going to see some misses on here too. Chase Claypool's on this list. Darius Slayton's on this list. It's not a bulletproof system. Not every player has to smash their rookie season to be productive later. And not every player who has a productive rookie season ends up smashing. Look at Hunter Renfrow. He had a fantastic first 2 years, and now he's literally worthless.
You know who's looking great, had a great rookie season on this, is Scary Terry.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin. Yeah, I didn't read all the names on here. But like looking from left, and I even took out some guys who were just too good. Like I took out Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, because they just skewed the data too much. It just made it not meaningful. So what I was just trying to prove here was that all 3 of these guys hit that benchmark, and they all have one thing in common. They all this season are having not only new quarterbacks on their leading their teams, but arguably the best quarterbacks they've ever had, and some of the best fantasy quarterbacks for wide receivers that we've ever seen over the last decade. You know, Russell Wilson has been sustaining 2 receivers in DK and Tyler Lockett, and or who they have, Doug Baldwin for a couple of years. And all I know is it's the best passer that George Pickens has ever had, not to mention he just lost Diontae Johnson for target competition. The Jets, obviously, everyone knows, are getting Aaron Rodgers, and he has no new target competition. And the Falcons are getting Kirk Cousins. These guys are all, I mean, obviously we've seen Garrett Wilson's a first-round pick in redraft right now. Drake London's a second-round pick. George Pickens is a fourth-round pick. So it's not like they're cheap. And you're going to have to pay a top 6 rookie first to get any of them, and probably 2 firsts to get Garrett Wilson, and somewhere between a first and a second to get first and a second to get London, and probably a first plus a third maybe to get Pickens just like you're in a vacuum. Obviously, every manager is different. Every league economy is different. People value picks differently. But Dave, what's your first reaction? I don't want to talk too long about these guys because we actually just talked about London and Wilson on our wide receiver rankings, but I think these guys are the poster children of room for increases in both volume and efficiency from just getting QB upgrades and scheme changes. What Wilson has a little bit less for improvement because I think they got a ton of volume when they had Joe Flacco there, but he should still see his target quality go up.
Yeah, I think honestly the biggest question mark is London, because I think I say that because Pickens not only has a new QB, he also lost his biggest competition.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson, Drake London didn't. Drake London has a brand new entrance in Bijan who's just going to be, if Bijan starts getting treated like Christian McCaffrey, I don't know how much that impacts London, because I think you've seen Debo Ayuk still be big. That it still could go great, especially if Kirk Cousins throws how he did under the Viking system. But yeah, I think that's my biggest question mark, is because Pickens in the games last year where Diontae Johnson was out, he scored over 20 fantasy points per game in those 3 or 4 games. London has had glimmers of it where he's been good, but hasn't had anything like that. And again, for Pickens, he of the 3, I don't know. I want to say that. I was about to say that Pickens had the worst QBs of the 3. They're all pretty freaking bad. So I don't really want to say that he was the worst, but either way, he has lost competition and new QB that I think Pickens, and we've seen it when he lost his base competition in Diontae Johnson for 3 or 4 games, he performed. Garrett Wilson, you kind of just assume that he's going to perform with that. Whereas London is the one where Wilson's kind of always had that higher draft capital. Drake London hasn't in fantasy. That Drake London to me is the one that I personally worry about the most. But I think, again, I do like his quarterback coming in more than I like Pickens' quarterback. So it's also kind of that double whammy where each one has their own advantages, I guess.
Yeah, I actually wasn't even going to initially put Pickens in here, but the data is just too compelling for me not to. It felt like it was just me trying to get under your skin. So Dave is a Pickens owner. So just to bring this chart back up, which the important stats here that I wanted to highlight were, obviously you look down at their target market share. Drake London at 29% his rookie year is off the charts. It's just commanding targets at a level that's only commensurate with Devontae Adams. And his 27% target per route run also is, when he's on the field, he is getting it. I'll be honest, as a London owner, it does make me nervous that I'm like, how did you just still not break? Like, you didn't have one broken play where you catch a ball and take it to the house for 75 yards. Like,
but quick question on that. Did you, and this is maybe you don't want to like blindside you, but have you compared this to since they've had Kyle Pitts? Like, he's not, I'm sure he's not the same level, but is he close?
Kyle Pitts has been there longer than London. So, well, I did have another exhibit that I just, and I'll keep it brief because it's going to tie into the next guy anyways. But part of why I'm so bullish on London is, and I kind of mentioned it last time we were talking about forecasting, was if you look at this chart here, it's NFL team pass attempts over the last 3 seasons. And you're reading from left to right. I have 2021, 2022, and 2023. The red columns are the Falcons. The purple columns are the Vikings, which were Kirk Cousins' former team. And the yellow columns are the Rams, which is the new head coach of the Falcons, came from the Rams. So, and then the green line is the league average each of those seasons. So you can see that the Falcons have had team pass attempts the last 3 years of 573, which was before Drake London got there, That was Matt Ryan's years. And then 415 and 530 over the last 2 years, which is Drake London's first 2 seasons, which are well below the league average of 565 and 572. On top of the fact that over those last 2 years, Kirk Cousins has averaged well above league average at 672 and 631, or Kirk Cousins led teams have had schemes that led to that many pass attempts. On top of the Rams leading a much closer to league average pass attempt system, which just, it leads me to believe that even if London doesn't do anything spectacular, special, better, his volume itself is going to take care of a lot of the problem in his game just by the sheer fact that operating off of a 415 pass attempt season is atrocious. Like, it's just, there's no opportunity. Even he could have been Justin Jefferson level of efficient and it wouldn't have mattered because he just didn't get enough volume to ever do anything worthwhile. And that's kind of why I'm also really bullish on the next guy I have on our list, which is Kyle Pitts. We did talk about him during our dynasty rankings, but in case people haven't seen it before, Kyle Pitts is going through this. He's one of the best college tight end prospects we've ever seen, and I think right now in a one quarterback league, you could probably buy him, maybe even for a mid for like during your rookie draft. You might have been able to buy Kyle Pitts for like the 107, maybe the 106. Like I think he was bought for the 103 in our league. And then he had an awesome rookie year. He was through the roof, probably worth 2 or 3 firsts. And then now he's had 2 back-to-back years dealing with injuries. Just hasn't looked that good on the field, frankly. Like, I saw a video of him falling over because he couldn't turn left. Like, he's like, fucking that Zoolander meme. I can't turn left. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little nervous about what if he just isn't as good as we thought he was. He's just not a good inline tight end, and he's also not a good outside receiver. He's just kind of stuck in no man's land. But my God, if he gets the same argument for London is that he doesn't need to be that good to see his fantasy value go up if the Falcons just get back to league average passing volume. Like he's just going to, by default, like we said with London, 29% of a 415 pass attempt season is what, like 120 targets? That's atrocious. Whereas like 29% of a 600 pass attempt season is 180 targets. Like that's 60 targets just by sheer volume alone. He's obviously not going to maintain that. But like the case being here that I think Kyle Pitts is a screaming buy low right now. I think if you could buy him for a first and a second and a one quarterback, I feel like that's a smash. How do you feel about Kyle Pitts? What are you willing to pay for him if you're TE needy? Are you looking, especially if you're in a tight end premium like we are now?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a straight value on him. Like it's at least a first, like that's no doubt, especially if you get it. I mean, okay, let's pretend we're in tight end premium.
Yep.
So we go from one PPR to 1.5. Man, right now today.
Yeah, like let's say you didn't have a tight end this season. Say you're sitting on.
I would like to. So I just gave up Jake Ferguson in a big package for Laporta we talked about before. Mm-hmm. I would say something like that. You have a competent, probably tight end, 8 to 14 to 16 or something like that, 8 to 16, startable. That you would want to swap in, do something like that, plus a first for Pitts would be my ideal. In a vacuum, though, if you're only talking picks, I mean, I don't think I'm doing. I'm in my head. I'm like 2 firsts to me. Just I don't think I would do it. I just don't think you've seen enough. Like prospects were so great, but it's been long enough that it just haven't seen anything that you're like, okay. And last season, there was talks of injury and he just didn't look good. Okay. But is he going to bounce back from that? And it kind of seemed like it was an all season thing. So I don't know. I'm probably first and a second, maybe you add like a third or fourth or like some other throw in, but I don't know. Definitely it's less than 2 firsts, 100% more than 1 first though. And I think for me, my objective would be if I'm trading for Kyle Pitts, I'm trading a startable, like a Pat Freiermuth or an Evan Ingram, something in that camp, Ferguson, plus a first to try to go grab Kyle Pitts with that potential upside. But I think again, like the question is too, Freiermuth might maybe with a better QB, but like maybe Freiermuth or Ferguson, if they have a decent start to the year too, and then you could also go do that. That same trade might apply for a while. Like even if Pitts comes off a little hot or like good, but not like tight end 1.
Right. Some Pitts owners might be dying to get out of him. Just being like, I'm not dealing with this shit again.
That's kind of the thing. Like, it's so the question is, right? Tight end's such a unique position too, where it either is or isn't, right? And so if you have that one good guy, it's either is or isn't. And if you only have that one main guy, but if their next person is like Schoonmaker, like something crazy like that, I don't know what to that point. Like, you just want someone you can actually put in and know is going to be doing well. And Pitts is only going to lose value if you could get a first plus Ferguson or a first plus Ingram or first, like, I don't know how you don't accept that. If you're like, if you have no competent backup, or like say you got a Bensonot or someone like that, or Bowers or whatever this year, okay, then fine. Like, you're running the risk with both of them. But as a lot of the other positions, like, you can run the risk if you have a couple wide receivers, like 2 that are like, oh, they could have this huge upside, but they might kind of lose a little value. It's okay because you have like 7 wide receivers. You don't have 7 tight ends that you're probably on your roster. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's what you're hoping for, is that manager has fear, and they're going to try to seem strong. That's the thing. They're going to hold strong.
Yeah, hold
the line. Yeah, they're gonna want to be like, oh, dude, that's fucking ridiculous. Give me 2 first.
You're so right. You're so right.
And so again, just know your value. Like, just know what you're willing to pay. And I think that for the best thing I would say is look at the last few years of tight end performance. Personally, I don't think Pitts is ever going to be tight end 1 just based off what we've seen. And he has other good players on his team. Like, he has the Bijan. It's kind of like where Kittle's not going to be number 1. He could be 2 to 4, but he's not going to be 1. Because he has too many other good players on his team. And it's kind of where the Falcons are getting to. If you assume London's going to be great, you assume Bijan's great. Like, I don't know how, like, you can't have everyone be position 1 at their team. And Bijan,
too many cooks in the kitchen.
And Bijan's projecting to be that one that actually is going to lead his position potentially. And so I would do the math, like, how many more points are you buying for adding a first to your current tight end? And is it worth it? If it's 2, it's probably not worth it. If it's 6 or 5 or 4, all right, probably is worth that risk. But and know what the downside is. Like, what has he been giving out that compared to your current tight end? All that. Analyze it out and then see if it's worth paying that more. But yeah, I wouldn't go much more than tight end 8 through 14 plus a first, or a first plus a second is probably where I'm at on Pitts today.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? And obviously we don't have time to do all this, but we probably should have done a whole intro to how to do valuations, because unless you're using a third-party service and then just turn your brain off, but like, when buy low relative to what? Like, what is low to you versus low to me might be different. Like, if the way I look at certain players, I say, like, my rule of thumb has always been a young under 25 wide receiver 2, wide running back 2 or better, like top 24 at their position, and under 25 is worth 2 firsts. That's just a rule of thumb. It's not perfect, but like Higgins a couple years ago, worth 2 firsts. Like, Drake London, worth 2 firsts. Garrett Wilson, worth 2 firsts. Just like a raw rule of thumb is if first round picks hit at about a 50% chance, to replace him, I need 2 firsts to account for the fact that there's only a 50% chance it's going to hit. That's kind of like my loose rule of thumb. Not saying
don't forget, T. Higgins was a throw-in in one of our trades.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Brent still won that deal. 2 firsts and T. Higgins for Breece Hall in a second. I still think Breece Hall is worth more than that, probably.
Wow, that's
in
crazy.
A 1 quarterback. I think Breece Hall is probably worth 3.5, 4 first. Now that we think about it, but again, that's my rule of thumb of like, how do I roughly value guys? Because like, a top 3 pick to me is worth like 3 firsts, or a top 2 pick is worth 3 firsts, 3 random firsts. Like, if I have the 101 and you say, what's it going to cost me to come up from the 108 to get the 101? It's going to cost you 2 future firsts. Just the starting point to get in that conversation. So like, and then all those caliber of players that are around the 101, which is like obviously Marvin Harrison, but your Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, whatever, are all worth about 3 firsts and more, and Bijan and whatever. It's like, that's how I always think about players in the form of firsts, because it's the most fungible, tradable asset. But like, when I say first, I really mean like the 108 is when I say a first. Not all firsts are equal. The 101 is worth obviously up 2-3 firsts more than the 112. But anyways, it's too much on valuations. But again, like Dave said, have your own values. Try to figure out where, if you are buying low on somebody, what does that mean to you? Because you can't just say, oh, I'm buying low. I spent 20 fab. Next guy I have on the list is Kyler Murray.
By the way, this is really going to be a long episode, huh?
I know it is. We're 45 episodes in. We're not even 3 players in. So
45 episodes in. Jesus Christ.
All right, let's I guess let's go a little faster. I'll just rattle off why quickly, and you can comment. Kyler Murray, I think he was injured last year with the ACL injury. Came back, looked fantastic when he came back. Like not like lighting the world on fire, but he didn't look sluggish, slow, poor. He's never had less than 18 points per game in a season, and he's had over 20 points per game twice. He was finished as a top 6 quarterback multiple times already. He's 26 years old, I think. Like, there's just, why is he going at quarterback like 9 range? Like, I think he should be that. To me, that's a buy low. If I've ever heard of one, let me get this off the screen. He should be, to me, he's in the same tier caliber of quarterback as a guy like Lamar Jackson, just not quite healthy enough. But like, I can't see how he doesn't score 20 plus points per game this season and then vault right back up into, or potentially even more. He could be in the category with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes by the end of the season if he also elevates his passing touchdown game and the legs come back. He could be a superstar this year. Obviously, things could go wrong, but I think Kyler is just a screaming buy. What do you think?
I would say who are the 3 QBs in front of him?
I think the quarterbacks in front of him, just generally, most people would say would be.
Well, I know the top 5. Go beyond that.
Okay, I have to start from top. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Burrow. What's his name from Houston? CJ Stroud, Caleb, and Anthony Richardson. Those 8 usually go ahead of him in startups.
Okay,
and so Justin Herbert sometimes too.
That's okay. He shouldn't. I don't know why people are still propping up Herbert as much as they are. His wide receiver room got decimated, and he had a bad season with them last season, with Keenan Allen having a great year. But yeah,
I agree with you on that.
I feel like honestly, Kyler Murray is literally that's why I want to ask the people right in front of him, because I assumed it would have been Caleb, Anthony Richardson, and someone else, and I didn't know it would be CJ Stroud, but that makes sense. I think that he's right there because CJ Stroud's a better passer, Anthony Richardson's a better rushing prospect, and Caleb was the QB1 to come off the board this year that like you kind of just throw him in that range. With the potential to run, and they're hoping to be as good of a passer as CJ Stroud.
Yeah,
it's hard to like. To me, that's not his ceiling. I don't really see Kyler getting up beyond QB 5 or 6, but like Brock Purdy was QB 6 last year, so like to get him at 9 is great. I think a lot of people are valuing Kyler in like home dynasty leagues at like 15. Yeah. So if you're paying QB 15 price to get the potential of QB, because I do think Kyler's great. I think Kyler can be QB 5, no problem this year if he's healthy and 100%. And so I see that upside, but I don't know if like I don't see if you're paying QB 9 price, I'd hesitate. If I'm paying QB 12 to 18, I'm in all day, and I would be trying to buy Kyler for 100% at that price.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I think it's easier to do it in super. I don't think one quarterback. I really don't know how to value quarterbacks. I think he's probably worth a first, but if you could buy him for, who's a quarterback? If you could buy him for a Brock Purdy and a third for Kyler, I feel like that's such a smash because I think Brock Purdy's ceiling is about 18 points a game to maybe 20. I think Kyler's ceiling is 24 points a game. Like, so that rushing floor is just so fantastic. I know you're a Brock Purdy lover.
I am going to do everything I can to get Brock Purdy back on my team. And so I'm hoping that some of the rookies smash and I'll trade out and get some value back with him. So the thing about Brock Purdy, it's really only going to be his sophomore season. And he already was QB6. Where like, if you're the Niners, what are you doing more? You're like instilling that confidence in Brock, like keep doing what you're doing. And the thing about him that I've watched the most whenever I've seen tape through watching their games, I rarely, if ever, see him make an inaccurate throw. And for me, it's like
Dave only looks at the good throws. Dave clicks highlights. Brock Purdy highlights only.
I am like Sports Center highlights top 10 Brock Purdy throws of the year, and then I'm like, all right, you're good.
How's your girth, bro?
And so But seriously, I don't really ever see him making an accurate throw. And for me, either that's because of the scheme and how many attempts he's actually making, and he's not getting tired or whatever. I don't know. If I'm the Niners, I'm trying to unlock that a little bit more at the same time, knowing exactly what we did last year got us to the Super Bowl. So how do they win? Big question mark of, is it letting IU go? Is Pierce all the answer? Whatever. But I think they invested more into their receiving game, I'd imagine they're trying to unlock Brock Purdy even more this season, which is truly his sophomore season. And it's like Brock Purdy, we're already writing off as like he's Jared Goff. And it just feels not premature, but a little bit premature. Like his real first season,
polarizing.
His real first season, he made it the Super Bowl. He feels like Patrick Mahomes, just not throwing it without looking. Like,
is that what he feels like when you're biting the pillow?
That's what that is. Like a mini Patrick Mahomes.
You're like, you kind of feel like Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry.
Listen, all right, I'm drinking beer, but what shots are we taking? Because you're on another level today.
Oh man, I had just had NyQuil before I got on here, so my clock is ticking. Let's go. All right, I didn't mean to bring up Brock Purdy and derail us a little bit. I knew that was a mistake. So let's move on to the next one.
You didn't derail though.
The next one I had was Achane. He is, we already talked about him in our RB rankings video. He's polarizing for us. I just think he fits that criteria of a running back who had incredible efficiency, which you've already all heard about. But let me rattle off some crazy 3 stats. These are the types of things you got to look for. And these ones are obvious because Achane was so good and he's so expensive. But he had a 7.8. Wait, I had it right here. I had 7.5 yards per carry, which led the league. On over 100 rush attempts, this wasn't on small chump change volume. He had 7.8 rushing yards over expected per rush, which led the league by more than 3 yards over any other player. He had a 93 PFF grade, which is Pro Football Focus's evaluation of running, which is more than just like yards or yards per carry. It looks at like run scheme and missing tackles and hitting the right hole and all that stuff that I don't understand. So I trust this is a fairly decent valuation. And he had a 28% missed tackles forced per attempt, which was second in the league, which means on every single rush, he made somebody miss a quarter of the time, which is incredible. It's everything you could possibly ask for out of a running back. And you could buy him now for like maybe a mid first or maybe a top 6 first and a 1 quarterback or maybe 2 first, whatever the price is. He's not yet as expensive as Bijan, Breece Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs. He's been lining up out wide at training camp, which you hear that all the time, but this is the one where it's really going to happen. And he's apparently bulked up. Like we saw all the pictures, everyone saw the screenshots. He's looking huge. I just feel like the players get injured. Everyone's going to say, "Oh yeah, but he got hurt." Players get injured. It's football. Injuries happen. In order for you to achieve the trophy on the mantle, you got to be a risk taker. And if you think Achane could ascend to that from this little spot in the middle to all the way up to the top of the pyramid, the food chain, and be right next to Bijan and Breece this time next year,
oh my god!
Then go spend your first and second or 2 firsts. Go get them on your teams now, guys. You're missing out.
This fucking guy.
Dave, what do you think? What do you think about Achane? And don't say he's just a little guy.
Okay. So, why would they draft Jalen Wright?
They just want to have guys on the team.
Guys being dudes?
Yeah.
No, I think that's
Raheem Mostert's 31 and has a notoriously long injury history.
I think he's actually 32, but either way.
32? What an old fart.
But Jalen Wright is literally just Achane just as a rookie.
Yeah.
And so.
Not nearly as good of a rusher, but. Similar, he's very fast.
We'll see.
I mean, Achane carried the load at Texas A&M. He had well over 200 carries like 2 years in a row. I don't know if Jalen Wright ever did that at Tennessee.
Listen, I don't know a lot about carrying loads. I know you do, but either way,
I walked right into it.
Either way, I just want to make sure that we're very clear. Jalen Wright scares me, and it scares me because it feels like what Miami does with McDaniels is that it's just try to win, but also be exciting at any cost. And that's kind of what his like mantra that I've been living by and watching. Like it felt like last year they're trying to get Tyreek to 2,000 yards. It really did.
Yeah.
Why? And then you see a lot of stats and analysis done on Achane, and like it really felt like he was playing in garbage time more than actual game mattering time. Now they have another guy that comps very close to him, and Achane was injured quite a bit, including in the preseason or in training camp. That's my concern. That like I don't think Achane's bad. It kind of feels just like a gadget guy. That he's so fast and so good. You know what he kind of feels like? But like less tanky and not like and more injured.
Tell me what guy it feels like to you when you close your eyes.
Cordarrelle Patterson.
CPAT?
Just like lightning in a bottle.
I was thinking Tavon Austin.
Sure, it's a good example too. But like just this guy that's like not gonna be your every down guy. He's not gonna ascend to this, top running back position, but they're just really good. It's just like because of fragility or because of just a loaded like a too many of the backs in the running back room. I don't know. I thought Devon Achane looked amazing, and if he can stay healthy, and I heard the stat the other day from some analysts analyzed like 12 seasons, the last 12 seasons, something like that, and they had said essentially injuries are random for most people. And you should never be pinging anything because of like injury concerns. It either is like they are injured every season or injuries are truly random. And they said like for 95 to 98% of the league, like it is truly random. So like
who is this guy? I like him.
I know. So I felt great about that with CMC or with Justin Jefferson if you're drafting him this season in redraft or best ball. So that's kind of the sentiment that I'm going to run with Devon Achane. Like I would pick him up in redraft. I don't know if I'm paying a premium in the tier that you have him in right now for Dynasty. And maybe I don't know what's the value you have on him right now.
Well, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but also like
feels expensive.
What other running backs do you think have a chance to vault into that Bijan Breece tier?
Great.
And I think
let me give you three. Not okay. Well, I vehemently do not think no matter what happens, Devon Achane is never going to be in that tier.
So you don't think he ever will be? Or you think you're just saying? Do you think there's other guys?
No. Like I think it's going to be the Jonathan Taylors. I think ETN, if he has another great season, he'll be in that conversation.
I think he's too old. I think ETN's too old now.
Well, sure. 25. Well, okay, yeah, sure. And it's pure dynasty. I'm just saying, like, to be that elite, like, you're going to draft him. Like, right now,
the combination of age and production. Sure. I think Achane is like the only guy who could vault from tier 2 or tier 3 up to tier 1. If he were to go out there and give you 280 carries,
I think Brooks is there. Sure, I think Brooks is there.
Brooks is a good one. Yep.
I think Trey Benson could be there this year if he has a good year. I'll give you three though who can't get to that level, but who I think can get very close or like to be a guaranteed top 12 running back for the next 3 seasons. I got 3 guys: James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh, Ramondre is a good
All
pull.
3 have had great seasons at least once. Mm-hmm. All 3 or 2 of them are on amazing teams. One,
Patriots are nasty, bro. Stop.
Of course, the Bills suck. Fuck it, Bills. Suck the Bills.
Suck it, Palmer.
Suck it, Palmer. And so I think if you look at those three guys, to me, if you're talking about this tiers, like could get to elite top 8 running back, like for a couple of years in a row. All 3 of those on this weird cusp of like everyone kind of thinks they kind of suck, but no one wants to sell them too cheap, but no one wants to pay a premium for them. And I just don't. I think at least one's going to do it. I don't think all 3 are. But I'm going to bet on one. I think one is just like, probably not. I think over under is like 1.5 how many actually make it to like this top 8 couple years in a couple of seasons in a row. But their teams are insane. Like their teams have a ton of potential. And again, reminded it with a shitty fucking Patriots team. Like, I don't know. I feel good about those 3 guys as like this potential upside. And again, what you're also talking about too is like competition and like the team dynamic. Like, until Mostert's gone and Jalen Wright sucks and it turns into a Tank Bigsby situation, shout out me. I don't know what I don't know. I have no faith in Achane doing it. It's to me, it's Pollard. Like it's Pollard all over again, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like you had that. He had one season. Okay, there's injury. Now he's out of the organization. Somehow Zeke's back. Like it's just kind of crazy.
Yeah. I don't think it's likely. I just think of the running backs that aren't there, I think he's the one that, to me, has the clearest path to being, oh my God, we're drafting him in the top of the first next to Bijan next year because he goes out.
Okay, another guy too, like in the first, Kyron. Like Kyron's the other guy that's like, if he does that again, he's in that tier.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
So like I don't know.
Okay.
There's a few other guys that I just think like, and it's mainly because of competition because there isn't a lot of single RB rooms. So that would mean kind of the norm is what Devon Chen's dealing with. It just feels like his is so unique with the injuries, a crowded backfield. Like let one thing pan out, be not injured for a season, and then let's talk. And it'll be more expensive. So again, if I could buy Achane for like less than a first, I'm in.
Yeah, no, you're not getting him for less than a first. I think he's worth a first and a half right now, minimum, in one quarterback. Maybe 2 firsts and one quarterback.
Tough. That's so tough. I don't know.
I mean, he's probably going at the 1-2 turn in a startup right now, or maybe the 2-3 turn in a startup. So I mean, it's just like
I'm looking at that.
Anyways, let's the last player I had on here, I'm not going to talk a lot about it. I want to update this 30 seconds max. Because one more tight end was TJ Hockenson. I think he's a screaming buy low because of injury discount. I think he's put up multiple top 6, top 3 tight end seasons on a points per game basis. We just actually had a TJ Hockenson trade go down in our league for a future first. I think it was TJ Hockenson and I forget what it was. I don't remember what TJ Hockenson for a first was essentially what it equated out to. And I thought that was a pretty light in a 1 quarterback league. I think the only problem is he has no quarterback and he has more target competition with Addison getting better while he's hurt. I think that does give you some cause to pause, but I think he's a buy low. He fits in that category of buy low players right now. That could be elite in that top tier of tight ends again very quickly if he comes out and just smashes.
He's the cheapest potential top 6 tight end out there right now. I almost bought him too in our league. I had several times we've had conversations about trying to sell, buy, etc. For me, bringing it up and the old manager bringing it up. So yeah, I think Hawk's probably the one that has the most upside. Like to me, if it's Hawk or Kittle, I'm going Hawk. Now,
how much would you pay for Cock?
Hawk coming off the injury is my main concern because if you're looking for needing a tight end this season, it's just not that you're gonna write him off, but you kind of got to write him off at least in theory. But yeah, I think of all the other people in that similar age group, or even in any age group, I just think he is a guy that could easily be top 6 tight end for the next, excluding this season, say the next 4 seasons.
Easily. That's why I had him on this list. You know, if you can go kick the tires on TJ Hockenson, especially if you're going to tight end premium, I think he's got
especially if it's tight end premium, 100%.
He's shown he can be a volume hog. He's shown he's an uber athlete. I don't think he's super efficient with the ball, but I think that's at that point when we're talking about a position that's so hard to get right. Like he's a type of player that I would, rather than spending my rookie first on whatever the back half of the first pick, instead of my Keon Coleman's, if I could turn that into TJ Hockenson instead, and I'm in a position where I can wait him out, I think I'm okay with that. But okay. Next, get on the next group of players. We're talking about these unsexy but cheap producers. I have here guys that I think are young enough to still bring in some dynasty value in the future, and they're definitely affordable, or they should be affordable depending on your league economy. Guys that can help you win right away too. Now, I don't think these guys are in danger of jumping into that elite tier, but I think they're just mispriced right now, or I think the market's put wrong on them. First guy I have on the list is Najee Harris. I think he's gotten so much flack for being a, Eddie Lacy 2.0, fuck cheeseburger Najee, just this fat tub of goo, and everyone loves Jalen Warren because he's the young, sexy, third down scat back. And it's like, yeah, no shit that Jalen Warren's yards per carry is 5.5 because he's going in on 3rd and 16 and getting a delayed handoff for 9 yards. Like, congratulations. That's not that hard to do. And he's getting all the outside carries for the easy yards. And Najee's running up the gut, the hard-nosed, bloody lip yards. And Arthur Smith freaking loves that. And Arthur Smith's the OC in Pittsburgh now. I think he's shown he can design unbelievable running schemes. He had Derrick Henry's 2,000-yard season or whatever a couple of years ago. He was the OC for that, or the head coach for that. He's got Cordell Patterson and Tyler Algier 1,000 yard seasons. Like, he is the RB whisperer. I think this is the year to go. If you can get Najee right now for just the 205, I think I would do it. I think if I was in a position where I needed a running back and the guy who had him right now was just kind of like, oh, I don't really love him. Like, unfortunately, the manager in our league thinks all of his players are worth at least 3 firsts. So we're not going to be able to get Najee. But if for those of you who are in multiple leagues, like, go kick the tires on Najee Harris. He should be worth a mid-second, even one quarterback, or a late second and third in Superflex. Like, he's been downtrodden. He's in a contract year. The Steelers didn't pick up his 5th-year option, former first-round pick. I think this is a good time to go get Najee. He's only 25.
Yeah, I think I do agree. I think Najee could be a good buy. I think both of them are. I think him and Jalen Warren are great buys. I think if we run the play of whatever Arthur Smith just did with the Falcons, both are great.
Yeah, that's actually true.
We're following current trends now, and then again, Derrick Henry. It's hard to say Najee is Derrick Henry. That I don't think they're going to be going for 2000.
You don't see the resemblance?
I don't see it, but I think it's an argument for both of them. So 100%. I think if you can buy any of them, either of them, I would actually pay a second for either. I think, especially if you're trying to win now. Like, if you're trying to have a preventative backfield right now that you can maybe have for a couple of years in the future there too. To spend a second and know you're going to get, I don't know, 10 to 14 points per game from either of those guys.
I agree. Nice. Guys, let it be known. Dave and I fully agree on something. Okay, next one I have on the list is Hollywood Brown. So Hollywood's kind of got a tough shake over the last few years. You know, he was dealt with the Ravens without Lamar for half a season 3 years ago, or the low volume passing attack Ravens his rookie year, or his first year in Arizona, he put up a monster first half of the season. Then he got hurt, broke his foot, was basically never the same the rest of the year. Then last year he dealt with Josh Dobbs and Clayton Tune at quarter. He's just never been in a position where he could just have a full, healthy season with an aerial raid passing attack. Weeks 1 through 6 of the 2022 season, when DeAndre Hopkins was out on suspension, Hollywood Brown was an alpha. He was 4th in the league in targets. He was 5th in PPR scoring over that stretch. And they were downfield targets. They weren't bubble screens. He had over a double-digit ADOT. And his team situation now is pretty similar in a sense that he's walking into the best fantasy quarterback we've ever seen. He's got limited target competition to start out. He's got a presumably suspended Rashee Rice and a rookie learning the playbook, as I always say in Kansas City, and Xavier Worthy. I think Hollywood's another guy you could probably get for a late first, early second, maybe a mid second right now. And it's like, to me, he could go out there and easily be the leading target getter on the Chiefs. I mean, you can tell they're clearly saving Kelsey for playoff runs. He's not going to be commanding 10 targets a game. I think Hollywood's a screaming buy right now. I think he could put up an easy top 20 season this year, maybe top 15. What do you feel? I think you were a former Hollywood supporter, Stan.
Yeah, I was. I'm not so much anymore. I don't know. I think when I was big into Hollywood Brown, he to me was going to be the alpha, and he never has been. And that's kind of the concern, is that we're going to a team that really has only had an alpha who was Tyreek Hill, a la top 5 wide receivers in the game for the last 6 years. Hard to say Hollywood Brown is going to be the next one that's going to be the alpha in Kansas City. I mean, I guess Travis Kelce sure has been an alpha too, but from a true wide receiver standpoint, no one's been able to overtake Kelce, even close.
Yeah,
and so that's, to me, is like my main concern around Hollywood Brown, is that you're right about Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice potentially be suspended, but I don't know. Sentiment is, unless Rashee Rice is in jail, he's going to get 4 games or so, and he's back. So, okay, so now you have 13 games or 12 games that 12 games that he's still just around. So hard to be like hard buy on him. So then now Rashee Rice steps in. He's probably out targeting Hollywood Brown. And if Xavier Worthy is anything like everyone in the universe is hyping him up to be, he's still going to have 4 targets a game. Like, he's not going to be nothing.
True.
And then you still have the other people on his team that caught targets last season. I just don't know how much Hollywood Brown could be to argue with myself. I 100% could also see Hollywood Brown getting 8 targets a game to start, and then Rashee Rice comes back and he still is getting 8 targets a game and putting up, to your point, like wide receiver 18 and 22. Like, I can see it. I wouldn't bet on it, I guess, is probably the better point.
I think he's 26 years old, so I think it was just an opportunity to maybe buy a guy on the cheap that could actually be a pretty solid producer.
Yeah, if I'm putting out 2/3 or like just 1 second, I probably would take the risk on Brown, especially if I already had a solid core and I didn't need those picks. I would feel pretty good about dropping that. Anything more, you got to really have that faith or hear some good things out of OTAs and minicamp. So if you got your ears to the ground or to Twitter and you're listening to all those things and it's hyping you up, then sure, go buy.
Yeah,
go buy.
I don't think I could send a first unless I was getting Hollywood and a second back. Then I would do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Or I would do. I think I'd be willing to send 2 seconds or a second and a third for him pretty easily in the right situation. Like if I was, say come August, I lose my wide receiver 3 and I would need to get a new one, and he's of the teams that are willing to sell, he's the receiver available. I'm easily sending 2 seconds to fill out my team with him because I just think he's going to be a high floor play that has boom weeks because every receiver in a Mahomes offense has boom weeks. And then we'll figure out where he signs next year. Maybe he resigns with the Chiefs. Maybe they really hit it off. Maybe he signs with the Bengals. We don't know. But all right, spent too long on Hollywood. Let's move on to the next one. Next guy I have on the list here is Diontae Johnson. The bane of Dave's existence. He is the former wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh. He's moving to a new home in Carolina this year. He at one point was a top 10 wide receiver, dynasty wide or fantasy receiver. He's kind of fallen off in the last couple of years. Largely, I think he dealt with some hamstring injuries, and I think the quarterback play, like you mentioned for Pickens, has just been downright fucking atrocious in Pittsburgh for 2 full seasons. He's going to Carolina. Like we said earlier, change of scenery, new coach, new quarterback that's supposed to be everything that Brock Purdy is doing. That's what the vision was for Bryce Young. A game manager, great pocket awareness, great anticipation throws. The perfect player for a guy like Diontae Johnson, who has literally no target competition besides Adam Thielen and a rookie Xavier Legette, who should be great, but again, he's still a rookie. It's just, I think he's going to walk it. He's going to literally sleepwalk into 160 targets. And I have a graph here just to showcase how good Diontae Johnson actually is as a receiver, agnostic from his quarterback play. This is from our good friend of the show, friend of the program, Matt Harmon, put together Diontae Johnson's 2023 success rate by route run. And if you're not familiar with what he does, he puts together all 9 routes that a receiver can possibly run and grades them out over a sampled period during the season. I think it's a 5-game sample. So it's not every single route they ever ran, or maybe a 3-game sample. So I guess it could be skewed by one good weak defense, but he grades out every play, regardless of whether or not they were thrown the ball on the play. It's just how well did they run that route and win that route. And he is the only receiver in football last year to have an entirely green route tree. This tree is lit up like a fucking Christmas tree. Not a single other receiver had a success rate that graded in the top, whatever that percentile is, 80th percentile, to get warranted a green colored arrow. And Diontae Johnson's the only one. So as you can see here, if you're looking around the tree, he's got like a 76% success rate on the dig route, which means 76 is green for dig, but 58 is green for 9 because it's relative to his peers, not necessarily a success rate number. You don't need to hit like 80% to be green. You need to beat out the rest of the players in the league at those routes in order to get your success rate be green, yellow, or red. So to me, this is one of the better route running savants in football, getting paired with one of the most accurate quarterbacks in draft memory, and the quarterback with a head coach who's a QB whisperer. Apparently, like, I should have had Bryce Young on here too. Fuck, but I think Diontae is a great buy low. Dave, what do you think? are you thinking?
Yeah, you stole my thing. I was gonna say Diontae Johnson's a great buy. I think if he can stay healthy, which again I said earlier, if they're not injured every year, injuries are random. So I think he's gonna be fine this year. That's how I'm gonna draft him. But to me, no, Bryce Young is my favorite buy low of the rookies of last year. Because he's the one of all the rookies, which between wide receivers, running backs, or QBs, to me, off the top of my head, he's the only one that I've been tracking that has so many pieces adjusted that you actually could see a drastic change from last year to this year, including adding Xavier Legette, Diontae Johnson, new head coach. Feels like kind of a win for him. Plus, new running back. So all that, I'm huge buyer of Bryce Young this year if possible. For Diontae Johnson, though, I think Diontae Johnson's a great buy. I think he is that person that he is where, to me, he's like a slightly elevated Terry McLaurin. Like, Terry McLaurin maybe has more upside, but Diontae Johnson's just done it more, better, for longer. And so I love Diontae Johnson. I think he's just a solid person to have on your roster if you need a wide receiver 2 or 3, especially if he can be your wide receiver 3.
That's what I would want him. Yeah.
Great.
What do you think we would pay for him if you could?
I
don't think about our league. Think about just like
I'm thinking in general. I wouldn't pay a first, but I'd be close. I'd be close.
Would you rather have Diontae or Hollywood?
Diontae, not even a question.
Gotcha. See, I think I'd rather have Hollywood, but barely. Like I think it's like it's. I think they're the same tier preference.
But you got to remember though. You got to remember, and I know he's still there, but like Adam Thielen was a top 5 wide receiver for the first like 9 weeks.
So true.
Or it was like wide receiver like 4 or something. It was like something crazy.
I think
and that was with Bryce Young with just garbage. Wait, who's older?
I think Deontay's just a little bit older. That's the thing. Yeah, Deontay's already 27 and Hollywood's 26. So not that it's a big deal. Just
Thielen? Oh, I
no. I'm talking about like in this category was guys that aren't these are not 24-year-old guys you're buying here. Like this is my guys. You're buying these guys to get points now, and I think it's a matter of Mahomes, but also target competition, or Diontae by himself on an island, no target competition.
Oh well, I mean,
also Bryce Young.
I mean, yeah, and you have Thielen, and you have Legette. There is technically competition there, but Diontae Johnson, there's 2 things. You have rookie who is 1 overall who wants some confidence. Diontae Johnson, all he does is get open. He's incredible, and as shown by the graphic you have up right now. So for me, like if I'm Bryce Young, my number 1 target I'm looking for every time is Diontae Johnson. He's always going to be open. And he's not at an age spike. Like if Diontae Johnson was 29, for sure, I'd be questioning everything. But at 27, I'm all in. I would be so close to a first. I'm easy where you were on Hollywood Brown, like a second and a third or something of that, or the first, and I'll get back him in a second. Yeah. Even him in a third back, I'd probably be okay with. Because I think Diontae Johnson has a chance to take a leap. It's again, if you need I think the challenge is on depth of team. Like if you have 3, like for me, I have 3 or 4 other guys. So I'm kind of like, oh, any of them could be wide receiver top 12. Anyone could be, they all could be wide receiver 24 or worse. I don't know if I'd go add another person to that and Diontae Johnson with a question on Bryce Young. But if I was almost in your shoes or some others who had like a wide receiver alpha and a decent wide receiver 2, I would 100% try to add Diontae Johnson as my third and like feel good about it.
I think it'd be the good thing I think I would try to do if it made sense for my team would be to pair another player that's a similar caliber of him with a second or a third. Like kind of like you just said, if you are really convicted on Diontae over Hollywood, send Hollywood and a third for him. Yeah. Maybe the owner feels the opposite, kind of the way me and Dave do.
Here, who's our owner? Is it Printy?
Yeah.
I think it's Printy. Printy, I am T-Bone. Openly offering is T-Bone?
Yeah.
No, I think it's Nick.
No, it's not T-Bone. I just looked at it.
Oh, they trade amongst each other then. All right. Trev, probably. Let's come back to the trade. Because I'm so overexposed to Commanders, I will offer you on air McLaurin and a third for Diontae just to de-risk, even though now I'm going to have Legette and Johnson.
And I will also offer you like something else. It's better than whatever you offer.
And I'll get Johnson in a second back.
All right, let's move on. It's too long on too much Johnson. Let's move on to our next one here. This will be brief because we've talked about him before, but I think Mark Andrews is
if you're not Diontae, you're not straight.
I think Mark Andrews, not much to say. I think what's happened to him is a product of circumstance. I think there's so many other sexy tight ends that moved ahead of him, and I think he's still such a superstar.
Who? Trey McBride and Sam Laporta?
I think Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers.
No.
They're all ahead of him right now.
No.
And I think you can – they're definitely all ahead of him in most like dynasty startup drafts. And I think – I'll pull up Adeko's right now.
I'll pull up right now. Right now, Mark Andrews is the 3rd overall tight end to go off the board.
That's what, sleeper?
Based on Fantasy Pros.
Oh, okay. I don't want to spend too much time. Well, it's not loading. Why is this not loading? What the hell? I think Mark Andrews is a super buy. Where I had him presumed around tight end 6 to 8 range, and I think he's going to score more than every other tight end. He could easily score more than every other tight end in football next year, and he's almost a lock to be top 5. And I know he's going after, but maybe not. I guess there's such an advent of all these new tight ends. Maybe he couldn't be, but I think he's been the leading target for Lamar Jackson every single season that they've been healthy together. Like Dave said, injuries are random. Of course, it sucks that he's been injured multiple times, but I think he's the type of guy that if I'm looking to make a championship run, he's only 29. He's younger than Ingram, younger than Kittle. Like, if you need a guy that you want to go make a run at for this year or next year, why I go get Mark Andrews right now. I think he's a beast, a monster. I think he's cheaper. I think you can get him for mid-first or mid-late first right now. And I think none of the other younger tight ends can you get that for because they're 5-6 years younger than him. You can't get Kincaid for a single first. You can't get Laporta for a single first. You can't get Pitts for a single first like we talked about. I think Andrews is the only one you can. And you're not going to improve too much value, but he's going to retain his value. And he's still young enough to be contending for multiple seasons.
Well said. But I do think I think it depends on the value. Yeah. If you're getting him because your league's valuing him at like tight end 6 to 10, I'm 100% buying Andrews. I mean, Fantasy Pros has him at 3. So at that point, like I don't
Yeah. So this is I hate this view, but this is Dynasty Data Lab, which is formerly Adeko's. He scrapes paid sleeper dynasty leagues for ADP. And you can see the blue ones are tight ends. And right now, Mark Andrews is going off the board on average of tight end 6 in real drafts, not just whatever Sleeper says.
Whatever Fantasy Pros is.
I don't even know what Fantasy Pros does for theirs. But so, again, these 5 tight ends are ahead of him.
Consensus of 21 experts.
Gotcha. So they're with us. They believe they should be higher. I hate you. All right. The last guy I had in this tier was Deshaun Watson. Just to get a quarterback in here. I think he's fallen way, way, way off the wagon. He was a 3-time top 10 quarterback at one point, and he's still not that old. I think he's 27 years old. The Browns showed that they have some offensive firepower in the form of Amari Cooper and David Njoku last year. They add Jerry Jeudy to that offense. They have Cedric Tillman, the rookie from out of Tennessee last year, who's starting to, I guess, crank it up during preseason or whatever, the OTAs. They have Nick Chubb hopefully coming back healthy. They have the defense to support him. I just think Deshaun's gotten, he's getting manhandled out there, if you know what I mean. He just, I don't know how to put this gently and massage it for you guys, but I think that Deshaun belongs at least in the conversation to being a startable QB1 for your team. Not saying pay QB1 prices, but if I could go out and if I could give up a guy like Jared Goff and get Deshaun Watson plus back, I think I would. If I could give Baker Mayfield and a small plus to go get Deshaun, I think I'd do it. If I'd be given like a second and third quality caliber assets to go get Deshaun, I think it's an or 2/3. I think it's a smash. Like I think it's just such an easy plug and play potential QB1, but also your backup. I mean, he's more attractive in Superflex, obviously, as your QB2. But you got any thoughts on Deshaun, Dave?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So like let's just run through. No injuries. Okay, is he going to beat at any time? Do you think this season is there any reality of him beating out Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Jackson?
No, I don't think he's going to be an elite quarterback.
No. I'm saying so his top 4 is already gone. Then we have no injuries again. Stroud, Burrow.
That's where I think he could end up fitting into.
Wow. Okay.
I think you could see him have like a 35 touchdown passing season, and he can still put up 400 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns like he was back when he was more mobile. Maybe that's the one thing too. He's been so injured the last couple of years and so suspended. Gosh darn it. We haven't really seen, does he still have the mobility or the scrambling ability? I think that's what I'm operating under, that assumption that I'm willing to pay this cheap of a price to see, especially in Superflex. If I could go get him for
okay. So then
an early second.
So then question back. You're then heavily buying Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku or Amari Cooper if he's going to have that kind of a season.
See, I think it's in the range of outcomes. I think of those guys, I really obviously would love to go get Amari Cooper cheap if I could, but I think there's an opportunity for him to be a fantasy dog. I think he was a sneaky scrambling quarterback, and maybe 35 touchdowns is too lofty, but I could see him doing what Dak did last year, which is what, 32, 31, like that. And Dak wasn't terribly mobile. I think he'd be more mobile than Dak and put up very similar quality air yards or air attack, passing attack as
he had
Dak
36
did
last season.
Damn. Okay, maybe not that much, but
with 2 rushing.
Yeah. So I just think there's a chance. I'm not saying I think it's less of a chance than any other player we put on the list of being elite, but I think he's a really cheap QB who could be a serviceable option for the next 3 or 4 seasons if he finally pieces it all together again. Maybe he's not. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe they're both true.
That's right.
All right. That's a wrap for our unsexy but point scorers who we think are undervalued. The last category we have
last
here.
Question. I want to throw one other guy in there real quick for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Aaron Rodgers.
I don't think it really fits the criteria, but I think he's definitely a buy low. He was sold for a third in my Superflex. I know, but I don't think it's any room for him to be a starter. I just don't think. Yeah, I wouldn't be counting on him doing anything more than scoring for me this year.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, he could, but that type of guy. I don't think I'd want to build up around him as a piece. He'd be a guy I'd go get if I suffer an injury. I'd kick a fourth for him in a 1 quarterback or a third in Superflex or whatever. Or maybe a third in both. I don't even know what he would go for. I just never think about Rodgers ever.
I know. I'm excited to see what happens. He might be my starting QB.
Oh my God! Yeah, no, you got Tua. Tua.
Yeah, I got.
All right. The last category we have here is the young, sexy players with super high upside. So let me start with a quarterback. Let's continue quarterbacks. I know you're getting tired, Dave. Keep together. First one I have here is Will Levis. Now, I'm not a Will Levis believer, but he is walking into an opportunity this year to do something with volume. The Titans clearly are investing in passing. They signed Calvin Ridley to a 4-year deal. They signed Tyler Boyd. They invested in the offensive line. I think they had J.C. Latham in the first. I can't remember who they got, but they're going all out. They brought in Tony Pollard, right? Who's a satellite-y pass catching back. It just seems like they're setting him up to let it loose. Let's see what we got with this kid. I think they like him. I think the team likes him. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They have Traylon Burks, obviously superstar. Chigoziem Okonkwo, whatever his name is. There are obviously some red flags with him. I saw that there's a stat out there called pressure to sack rate, which is basically of the number of pressures that you receive, how often you get sacked. And normally, if you look through the list of players, all their rookie seasons, if you have a pressure to sack rate over 20%, it's just not good. There's very few quarterbacks on that list that have had a pressure to sack rate over 20% that have done anything with their careers. I think the only ones I found on that list was like Kyler Murray. Everyone else has just been like, it's like your Dwayne Haskins and Zach Wilson, and it's just guys who are just like not cut out to be NFL quarterbacks. And his was like 28%, something astronomically high. Now, that's not to say that everyone with a less than 20% pressure to sack rate is a superstar. It just is kind of a hurdle to clear to be good or to have a chance. You're able to process the field fast enough to not get sacked. But I think he's got a chance to put up some volume this year. I think he's one of those guys you could probably get for a second or a third or fourth. Actually, in 1 quarterback, probably get him for a third. And he has a chance to be the next guy that everyone's like, wow, look, he's like Baker Mayfield. He's a gunslinger. He's I don't know, could appreciate and value and put up some valuable scoring points for you. This is more of a super flex play, but I wanted to get one of every position on each tier. So that's why I have Will Levis. You got any feedback on Will? Big Willie?
It should have been Bryce Young. Next one.
Should have been Bryce Young. That was a mistake on my part. We kind of already talked about it, but Bryce Young would fit this category as well. I think he's another guy. If you could send a third and go get Bryce Young or a fourth, I think it's a guy you definitely go kick the tires on. Especially in Superflex, he just got bought for a first in my league a couple months ago, which I think was
the other one I would say too. He's probably more expensive, but I think it kind of depends on perception. I think the other two actually is Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. They're not sexy. They're both young. They both have good teams or seemingly good teams.
Jordan Love goes in the second round of a Superflex startup.
Yeah,
Purdy is definitely undervalued.
I think depending on your league though, like someone might be like, oh, I already have Lamar Jackson. I don't really need Jordan Love.
Oh, in one quarterback,
yeah. That like I don't know. I don't know what you'd end up paying for him, but if you can get him in the same range, like in that,
it's the hard part about one quarterback. It's really hard to figure out quarterback values because, like, okay, if I'm sitting on Lamar and Jordan Love, I don't need Jordan Love. I almost am willing to send me Baker Mayfield in the second. I'm gonna play Baker once a year, and I'll play Lamar all the other games. And it's like, am I selling short on Jordan Love there? I don't know.
Right, all right, that's the thing. If that's their starter, is Jordan Love, it's going to be more expensive. But if he is their bench player, I think you probably get a pretty decent deal on him, and he might be your top 8 QB this year. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Let me close out some of these windows. Too many windows open. Why is there so many duplicates?
Dupes.
Where'd that window go? The next one I wanted to talk about is some running backs. So the first guy on the list I have is just situation dependent. Kind of what we were talking about earlier, like a path to increasing in value is just a change in situation. This guy didn't have a ton of activity last year. He was also dealing with an injury, but it's Kendre Miller. He is the backup running back to Alvin Kamara in New Orleans right now. He was a third-round pick in the NFL draft, I think, and in 2022 or 2023. He's a guy who I'd be willing to go out and buy. If I could buy him for a third or 2/3 or another solid caliber running back plus a third to go get him, I think that's a type of prospective play I'd make to say the opportunity is there. It's obvious. The owner's going to also know this. You're not coming at him with a surprise and he's going to be, oh, well, I'll get rid of my shitty running back. But you're having the foresight to say, if anything, if you think he could smash, you should probably send a second and a third to say, I'm going to overpay now because I think he's got the opportunity later to be the bell cow in New Orleans, especially if anything happens to Kamara injury-wise. I think Kendre is somebody who I would target purely off of just opportunity. What about you?
So, yeah, I was just looking up Kamara's contract situation. So he has a massive fucking payday next year.
Does he? He must have a huge dead cap, I wonder.
He'd have a base salary of $22 million next season. That's crazy. Yeah, he basically signed a $75 million contract. It's all backloaded. Which a potential out
and they
after
do have it. Yeah.
Year 4, which was last year. They didn't do it.
No, so this is 2024 right now.
No. After. Oh, it's at. Okay. Maybe you can.
You're right.
I think they missed it. Either way. Huge. So I think that's my one concern is Kamara still looks great last year. Like I am in best ball. I am overdrafting Kamara every time.
Yeah, he's so cheap.
So cheap. And it's like you just got to remember that he's even there. And so it changes the whole way that I draft. And in whatever round he's projecting to go, it's going to keep moving up and up, I think, because I always draft him 1 to 2 rounds early, depending on where I am in the draft.
Dave is single-handedly moving the underdog ADPs.
I am single-handedly.
Yeah, keep drafting Sam Laporta in the first, and you're fucking ruining it for everyone.
But yeah, I think so. I think that's the tough thing around Kamara. He just looks so freaking good that it's not, Kamara is the Christian McCaffrey type back where he just does everything. Like, so unless if he starts really sucking, I don't know. And Kendre Miller kind of seems like a Kamara a Kamara Jr. I just don't know where Kendre Miller is going to come in and just get that. But yeah, as soon as Kamara's gone, I am so excited for Kendre Miller to get into that system and be
Right.
running.
So what do you think the price would be on Kendre Miller right now if Alvin Kamara got cut?
Oh, if he got cut,
It's like same. I'm saying so then right
Kamara's
now
gone or injured, I'm paying a first for Kendre
right.
easily.
So if you could buy Kendre, I guess for 2 seconds, if you're really convicted, like 2 seconds
no,
for
even
Kendre
now,
is yeah.
No, even now, I'd say a second and a third.
So I was probably too light on my original guidance. Like you might have to pay 2 seconds to go pry him off that owner, and because that owner knows the same thing we're talking about.
Yeah, I'd say a second and a third. I would move now, even if I don't have Kamara. If I had Kamara, I'd probably be willing to pay 2 seconds to just ensure that I have that backfield for the next couple of years. The only hesitation I have is what I've seen with the Niners. I've had McCaffrey for several years. I've had Elijah Mitchell for that same time period. I've also had their third string person for that same time in my taxi squad because they draft a running back every fucking year.
Yeah.
So kind of as a forewarning, if you're going to take that strategy where you're going to go with Kamara and you also have Kendre or some combination where you're going to acquire both of them somehow, there's always a third guy lingering, and you just never quite know if you actually even have the number two. And if someone else ends up getting them, you're fucked. So just be careful. But I do like Kendre Miller a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so the next exhibit I'm going to go through is some more lower volume running backs who were very efficient last year. And let me preface it. I put together this table. It's of only rookie and sophomore running backs last season relative to each other. So some players are going to be highlighted super green and some are going to be highlighted super red, but that's red compared to each other, which is all other rookie and sophomore running backs. They were all pretty good relative to the entire suite of running backs that played last year, but this is just only relative to each other. So here's an efficiency table that I have here. I think it's a really good job of articulating some of the things we talked about earlier. So here is the 2023 season sorted by rushing PFF grade. And I left Christian McCaffrey in there highlighted in order to kind of showcase how these players stack up against the GOAT, Christian McCaffrey. And the categories I have highlighted are PFF grade, missed tackles forced per attempt, yards per carry, explosive run rate, which is just how many of your runs went for 10 plus yards, rushing yards over expected, which is some convoluted formula that NFL Network does, which calculates how many rushing yards did you earn over what they expect you to earn based on how well players were blocked or what the running call was or whatever. And the last category for rushing is yards after contact per attempt. And then the off to the right, I have receiving efficiency metrics. From left to right, I have PFF grade, missed tackles forced per reception, and yards per route run, which are three different ways of looking at pass catching ability. Missed tackles forced per reception is just good to show how good you are with the ball in space. It's not necessarily always going to be super indicative because it depends on the types of routes you're running. You're running wheel routes. You're going to obviously have more chances to make missed tackle or screens make more people miss than on what are they called? The little in-cut drags that running backs run. But anyways, I highlighted two guys on here that are just off the charts efficient on super low volume, albeit they both had less than 60 carries last year. But Keaton Mitchell and Jaleel McLaughlin, they're two guys that are at the top half of every single category. They're highlighted green in some facet across the board. Besides Keaton Mitchell's missed tackles forced per receptions, apparently he made nobody miss. What a loser. And they don't have enough carries to even have a rushing yard over expected category, unfortunately. But this is kind of how I even found these guys in the first place, is I was too busy trying to explain to Dave how good Devon Achane was. And I was like, oh, holy fuck. Keaton Mitchell and Jaleel McLaughlin, and even the guy we talked about earlier, Jalen Warren, are pretty fucking awesome. And as you guys all should know, the more touches you get, the less efficient you're going to be. You can't possibly maintain a 7.5 yards per carry like Achane has here. You can't possibly maintain a 35.7% missed tackles forced per carry when you get 300 carries. It just doesn't happen because you're running inside like Najee Harris does and you get stuffed to the line. But my God, Keaton Mitchell has a 92.5, PFF grade, which is second on the list. A 31.9% missed tackles forced per attempt, which is second on the list. An 8.4 yards per carry, which is first on the list. A 25.5 explosive run rate, which is first on the list by a wide margin. 5.7 yards after contact per attempt led the list. He is just an absolute monster. 82.1 PFF grade is third on the list, only behind Breece Hall, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Christian McCaffrey. Like, he's just an efficiency monster. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and do this on a 300 carry volume. He's obviously behind Derrick Henry and coming off an ACL surgery. But if you could go out and buy him for a third, like, I think it's just such an obvious smash. Same with Jaleel McLaughlin, 82.8 PFF grade, 26.3% missed tackles forced per rush, which is, can't really tell by looking at it, fifth on the list, maybe. 5.2 yards per carry, which is above average. It's green. 16.6% explosive run rate, which looks like third on the list. 5.3 rushing. Oh, I was going to Jalen Warren stats, wasn't I? No, Jaleel McLaughlin. Doesn't have rushing yards over expected. 3.4 yards after contact per attempt. 85 PFF receiving grade. 1.63 yards per route run. This is another guy who super low volume, but super highly efficient. If anything were to happen to Javonte, or if he were to carve out a bigger role for himself, those are the two guys I'm like, if I could go sneakily send off a third for these guys or throw them into a trade where I'm like, hey, I'll give you Terry McLaurin and I'll trade you whatever, Diontae Johnson for Terry McLaurin, and how about you kick in Jaleel McLaughlin? We'll call it a deal. Like, that's the type of guy I'm trying to sneak into a deal if I can. What do you, Dave? What I just threw a ton of shit at you. What do you first instinct looking at this list? What are some things you notice or you see, or do you think this matters to you, or does it make you super bearish on all fantasy running backs because you hate my exhibits?
No, sorry, I was just watching Jaleel McLaughlin rookie highlights.
Are your pants still on?
Yeah,
Dude, this is a family network.
It's loose. But yeah, no. So this was what I was watching last year. Is Jaleel McLaughlin and Keaton Mitchell looked amazing, and if Henry didn't go there, I would have been very optimistic on Keaton Mitchell this year. Not that I'm not optimistic on him, I am, and I am going to try to acquire him throughout the season, just as to have a backup. I also think he has a lot of potential. And as you know, I already own Jaleel McLaughlin. That I think that just needs to get the workload of the opportunities because he's electric. I think that the interesting thing here is you can compare them both a lot to Jalen Warren, in that Warren is handcuffed by opportunities, and his efficiency is still great, but to your point, you made a great point earlier. Like, obviously, if you get 300 rushes, you're not going to have 7.5 rushing yards over expected. So it's kind of the same thing here, where efficiency is going to go down, but how much is it going to go down drastically if you were to add 20% more carries, or if you get those two guys from 60 to 150? Like, I don't think they're going to suck. They did pretty freaking good when they were in. You can't expect someone to be terrible, but efficiency for sure will go down. I think that for me, I totally agree with both those guys. I think Keaton Mitchell in the fantasy world is probably a little bit more expensive than Jaleel McLaughlin. However, I think Jaleel McLaughlin has the more likely opportunity to do something this year or next year, pending how team comp is, etc.
Yeah.
The people that are most interesting to me on this one are the people right after him. If we talked about earlier, the Isaiah Pacheco, the James Cook, in that block there, right? It's Jahmyr Gibbs, Pacheco, Cook, Hall, all super interesting. And then you have Tajay, Bijan, and then Kondre's a little bit down there too. But like, for me, all these guys are super interesting to kind of watch out for. And I think it's also something to note where, if you're not talking Dynasty, which I know we are, but in a redraft side, Kyron to me still has a lot of like scares. I'm still kind of like uneasy about actually trusting that Kyron, especially after the Corum pick. But like, look at that. And he did have all the rushes in whatever 14 games, whatever it was. So I don't know.
He's just not efficient through the air, which is what scares me.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I've been a big Henry backer since I've had my team, and I'd rather have a great rusher than a great.
Been laying on your back for Henry. Got it.
But no, I love this chart. Hopefully you keep it updated. Is this what was the basis of this? Is this an all running backs? Like, is this anyone over 59 PFF run grade?
This was all rookie and freshman and sophomore running backs. Plus, I kept Christian McCaffrey on there for.
I got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
And actually, I think I left Breece Hall in there too because he was one that I thought was. Again, it's important to look here. Like we all know, Breece Hall and Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan were spectacular, and they're not at the top of all these efficiency metrics. Just to prove the point that you can't possibly sustain that level of efficiency, but these are good numbers. Like, and then you look down here, like Rachaad White has some pretty piss poor efficiency metrics, but he got the volume, which is what made him that good. I'm sure if Rachaad White got 65 carries and 60 receptions, he would be at the top of this list with all the other pass catchers. It's just
well, hold on, quick. I guess pass catchers is important, but that's actually a question that I've had. It would be a good OGQ, and it's probably just perception. We've seen it with Tony Pollard as like the guy that came in, got 6 to 10 carries a game and did really well with them. I've been in the camp where, for me, and that's just going to be a passing down where you get that kind of dink out pass, screen pass where you go. I've always been in the camp where, like, if you're actually rushing the ball, I just feel like, how could you be efficient? You just don't have your legs on you. Like, because to have the efficiency at some point too, you have to have that 30-yard smash run to level out your average. If you're only going to average that 3.5 yard run going up the gut or whatever with a true rush. So I don't know. I'm kind of in that camp too, where if you're truly running the ball, you're not this like screen pass catcher, that we've seen with the Pollards and such. I just find it impressive for the people that don't get a lot of carries. The Keaton mentioned Jaleel from last year on the pure rushing side, who were super efficient, or the Devon Achane too. Like, it is ridiculously impressive. So that's just also my camp too, because for me, I just can imagine that rusher. Yeah, you have fresher legs, but like, it's just like feel for the game. And I know it's just running, but I don't know. Maybe you don't need it running. I don't know.
No, honestly, when I was putting this together, I was actually shocked at how high Achane was on every category. Like, I knew he had really high yards per carry, and I was like, I know he's going to have some things that are going to be skewed by the fact that he just had these huge 80-yard runs. And I'm like, wow, yards after contact, 4.9. Like, that's pretty impressive. Again, maybe he just broke one tackle one time and then ran for 70 yards, and that skewed the whole data set. But like, it just was, I was like, wow, this is making me look better and better every time. All right, so that was a fun exercise. I have one more graphic for you, and this is about we'll rip through this as quick as possible. But what I'm looking at here is cheap year 2 or year 3 potential breakout wide receivers. And so before we get into that one, I wanted to pull up why it's important to look at not just fantasy points per game. And that is important, it's not the only thing. So I have here, I charted out, and I only did it for one season, or I'm sorry, for one set of data, but it was going back to 2016, rookie yards per route run regression versus fantasy points per game. And then I did the same for what their rookie points per game, how that predicted sophomore points per game. And so I did that rookie yards per route run versus sophomore points per game, and rookie points per game versus sophomore. Basically to say, what's more predictive? How many points you score in your rookie year, or what your yards per route run is. And obviously, your points per game in your rookie year is more predictive year over year. That's not to say that yards per route run is not indicative. It's less predictive, but it is still predictive. So these are two graphs. If you're looking.
So hold on, is the X?
The X-axis is your points per game.
Got it.
In both situations. And the Y-axis in the left graph is your yards per route run, and the Y-axis in the right graph is your rookie points per game. So it's just kind of just showcase here that while rookie points per game are more predictive year over year, so it should be a good barometer for how they're going to do in the future, it's still sometimes helpful to look at their yards per route run because it can be predictive. It's just not as good.
Who's the Gabagool who had 15 points in their rookie season, then 3 in their sophomore season?
No. These are both. They're both of these. The x-axis is their sophomore points per game. And I was just trying to figure out which metric was more predictive. I charted rookie yards per route run versus sophomore points per game, and rookie points per game versus sophomore points per game. And like I said, saying rookie points per game will be more predictive, but it's not the end all be all. But so now let's get to our rookie graphic here, which I brought this up. I showed this earlier, but this graphic here is a chart again across the top from left to right. It's first column is the wide receiver name. The second column is their draft capital. The third column is what their rookie season was. The fourth column is their fantasy points per game. The next column is their rookie season yards per route run. The next column is rookie season targets per route run. And the last column is rookie season team market share. And I set up some qualifying benchmarks. I wish I wrote them down. I think it's a 1.3 yards per route run and 10% market share. Very, very basic. And it pulls up a complete list of all those wide receivers who hit those benchmarks. And the few of the names on the list that I think are undervalued right now are some of our sophomore receivers or junior receivers are Christian Watson, Jahan Dotson, and Treylon Burks. And then rookie receivers that I think are undervalued are Josh Downs and DeMario Douglas. Now, again, these are not, they hit these benchmarks, they're going to be stars. Because I think we could I think all these guys have different prices. I think if you want to buy Christian Watson right now, it probably costs you a late second. You want to buy Jahan Dotson, it probably costs you a third. Treylon Burks, probably a fourth, or maybe some fab. Josh Downs, probably a second or a third. DeMario Douglas, a second or a third. For me, it's going to be at least 2 firsts. But everybody else, it's but the point being is not all these guys cost the same. There's obviously been changes in their all situations, but these are 5 receivers that hit all those benchmarks, and they're in the same list as guys like Jordan Addison, Tank Dell, Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk. Like the list goes on of all these guys who hit these same criteria. And there's very few misses on this list. There's Elijah Moore, who had a phenomenal rookie year. I mean, like fantastic. Chase Claypool, Darius Slayton, Hunter Renfrow. That's basically it. Like the rest of these guys are all fucking hits in some regard. DK Metcalf's on here, Christian Kirk, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Cooper Kupp. Juju was a star for several years. Like this is good company to be in. And this is what at least was the first order of how to identify some breakout candidates. Who are guys that thrived in very, very small sample sizes their rookie year? And how can I extrapolate that into a buy opportunity? I think all of these guys are not underpriced. They're just cheap. Some of them are correctly priced, but they're still just cheap guys you could take dart throws on and potentially have yourself a year 3 Nico Collins like breakout or a Devontae Adams style breakout in year 3. There's guys that not every wide receiver is made the same way. The anatomies are different every time. There are certain things that they do, and these are the guys that I'm targeting. Specifically, obviously, I have like 70% DeMario Douglas on Underdog right now. I think he's just such a steal in the pick 200. I think he is an opportunity to lead the Patriots passing attack, and if Drake May is 80% of CJ Stroud last year, Douglas is going to smash. But Dave, what do you think when you see the list here? Did anything stand out to you? Do you see any buy opportunities or anyone that you'd be more interested in buying than others, or somebody you might be avoiding for one reason or another? Whether it's maybe you already have a bunch of commanders. Are you fading Jahan Dotson? Or are you trying to compete?
I know I'm fading Jahan Dotson so hard. If Jahan Dotson has a season, I'm gonna be so pissed because that's the only commander I don't have on my team. So that's just a personal. I do think that like Jahan Dotson could do it. I find a hard time believing that with all the new people on his team. So I just don't. Unless he can somehow overtake McLaurin as the true alpha wide receiver 1 option, and maybe he builds a rapport with Daniels. I don't know. I'm gonna kind of write off Dotson right now to be top 24 potential. Yeah, I think the rest are just super interesting. I don't know. I think obviously like the ones I'm most bullish on, the ones we talked earlier, but for the ones you just mentioned, like I think the only ones I just am totally avoiding is Treylon Burks.
Wow.
But like Watson, that could be a great buy. I would if cost is right. I'm really interested in Watson. I'm interested in Downs. I wouldn't say really interested, but I'm definitely interested in Downs. And Douglas is kind of in that same ballpark. Like I know you just heard like through OTAs and stuff that he had the best mini camp and all stuff like that. Like great. But in ambiguous situations, I'd rather buy the people that are more cheap if it's really that cheap. What am I looking at?
This is a tweet I found earlier today. Day 3 rookie wide receivers to post a 22+% target rate and 1.50 yards per route run on at least 300 routes. I will start the list. It is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Marcus Colston, Mike Williams, Denarius Moore, and DeMario Douglas. Pop Douglas is the best bet to be Drake May's wide receiver 165 target season. Incoming Antonio Brown 2.0. DeMario Douglas. Heard it here first on the Drafts and Draughts podcast.
All right, take my seconds.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think again, for the best thing I would say is they're really a good comparison piece to the Packers. So I like to have him and Watson here. I'd rather just buy the one that's cheaper. So if Watson is cheaper than Jaden Reed, I'll buy Watson. If Pop Douglas is cheaper than Polk or I always forget the other guy. I don't know Baker, thank you. Then yeah, maybe I'll buy Douglas. If they're all about the same, maybe okay, he already has a year in the league. I'll buy him at equal value. But I'd rather take the risk on whoever's going to be that other person if they're a little bit cheaper with really good potential upside. Did Jaden Reed not make this list?
No. This is the list for 2023. 2023 rookies were Josh Downs, Tank Dell, DeMario Douglas, Jordan Addison, and Zay Flowers.
That's interesting. I do find
the only guys I hid from this data set are Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Because I just was like, they're so far off the scale that it's like no one should be compared to them.
Yeah. No, that's great. So I think then, I think that's an interesting conversation then as to why Watson should be. And then again, he equalized his quads.
2.26 yards per hour and was the highest number on this page.
Yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be great. Like there was no doubt if he was healthy, he was supposed to be the wide receiver 1 with the Packers. I just worry if Jordan Love is building confidence and he has it with Reed, he doesn't have it with Watson. Does he end up going back to Watson when he's healthy? But I think a lot of people would hope that he does. And I think Watson might just command it at some point. Just might not be at the start of the season. So, I like it.
I like it too. Dave, we did it. That was a long episode. I'm sorry, but also I'm so thankful you guys listened. If anybody listens, if anybody's out there listening, leave us a little emoji in the chat. Dave, I appreciate you putting up my whole list. I had a lot of fun putting it together, to be honest. So I'm glad that you give some good feedback on the graphs. I'll keep that up. I'll be able to do a mid-season report on that shit for the RB efficiency report, mid-season edition.
Love it.
All right.
And as you all know,
we are back, baby. We are fucking back. We're back. Classic.
I don't know how you did that, but I freaking